Okay, thank you. If everyone's back, next we have our budget summary for the Department of Human Resources. We have Director Kuzin at the podium. Thank you very much, Director. And again, just let us know if we can't see. It looks like the display is working better tonight, so we can tell which slide you're on, but just in case. Appreciate knowing when you're moving. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Conley. Aldermen and women, good evening. We're here to present one of your smaller budgets. HR represents about 1% of your budget. I'll go through each activity that we do, and at the end, if you have any questions, we'll be happy to entertain. We're on going to go to slide 2. The HR, we have 3 different areas. Employee relations, which is the benefits division. There's basically 2 staff people right now that manage benefits for approximately 4,000 people. That's our employees, their dependents, and retirees. Civil service, that is one of Kim Homeyer, who's with me tonight. That's one of her specialties. That's where we, the budget for all of our testing activities, which includes police and fire entry, promotional, electrical apprentice, and any tested positions. So that's a big chunk of what she does. And then administrations, that's where we pick up all other activities outside of those 2 categories I just spoke about. Next slide. There is one error I caught on this after it was published. Our authorized headcount for this current fiscal year is 10, not 11. So we are requesting 1 additional position for the coming fiscal year. I want to point out that we do have 1 vacancy presently. One reason we're asking is when you look at the national average for a workforce, currently we have 1 HR staff person for every 140 employees. National average, depending on which metric you use, could be anywhere between a low of 1.4 to a high of over 2 HR staff members for every 100 employees. If I use 1.4, it would be 18. 18 would be more than we would need. But if we can get that extra person, what we're looking for is an assistant director. That person would help with a number of activities in the office, including training and help with our succession that we need to plan for in the office. Next slide. Our budget's pretty well flat throughout most of our lines. The exception is personnel services, and that is that 1 position that we're asking for. Historically, almost every year without fail, including this fiscal year, we expect to lapse funds due to attrition. We've had some turnover in the office, which has generated some savings. We, like every other department, have attempted to slow down our hiring and replacing positions, which should yield about $60,000 in savings in just the personnel lines for the current fiscal year. Next slide. So in addition to the additional expense for the assistant director, we would also, we're reducing some of the commodities, the contractual expenses, by over $5,000. Next slide. Big challenges that we've had with every other department is in regard to COVID. It threw a lot on our department. We have worked with each individual department every time we get that phone call, that email that someone has tested positive and they have questions. So that has really increased the workload. Fortunately, it's starting to subside a little bit. Hopefully it'll keep that trend. In addition to the COVID, one thing that accompanied that this year is, if you may be familiar with, is we're getting hundreds of unemployment claims for our employees. This is not something unique to the city of Springfield. It's to the state, it's to the nation. There's a lot of complaints taking up a lot of time that we have to go and address that. So that's added to our workload. One big accomplishment that we had was that COVID brought about was fast forwarding the online open enrollment for our employees. It was a big change, and the people that sit behind their computers, I think they were very comfortable with it mostly. The ones that had more difficult were the people that don't do that on a day-to-day basis. But we did get through it. We had very few problems, and we are now finishing the audit process so that we're ready for plan year 22, which begins March 1st. So cards will be going out soon. Kim completed the police promotional and police entry exams. That's a very labor-intensive process. It's As Chief Winslow, when you get there, one thing that we're noticing that's, again, another nationwide trend, we started with over 537 applicants for the police entry, and we ended up with about 20% of that on our final list. So we are being impacted by what's going on nationwide. We did manage to complete some RFPs for the employee clinic and a health TPA. Our hiring, we hired 39 new employees, hired, rehired. That doesn't exclude the temps. That's about half of what we would normally hire in a given year. Retirements went up. We had 61 retirements this past year and 44 resignations, so we've had some turnover there. Some of that is, I think, related to COVID and people just getting to that age bracket where they say it's time for them to go. As far as our goals, some things that we've mapped out, and before I move to those goals, I just wanted to point out our FY21 goals. We wanted to focus on training and development. Unfortunately, we didn't meet that goal, and what happened was, you may be aware, we lost the labor relations manager, and we were working with Nate quite a bit. We were optimistic we'd get some training done with the field. We did hope to expand usage of self-service, so we did meet that goal. The positive customer service experience, that's always a goal with HR and every other department of the city. We're fortunate that we do have a good staff, and I don't hear a lot of complaints about customer service in our area. And we did complete the RFPs we discussed. Looking ahead to FY22, one thing we didn't include is that we do have a few more RFPs that we'll be putting out this year. And it's for health-related activities. The other goals that we have is we do want to overhaul the new employee orientation. Right now, we take about a full day to work with new hires, and it's a lot of information. So we'd like to fine-tune that so that we can make sure that people coming on board get the best experience and know what to expect from the city. We need to update the city's compensation plan. One reason I believe that we're having turnover is and as you discussed previously, is the compensation factor, how we are having people taken away from us for monetary reasons in many cases. If we can get this extra person, that'll help us with that training. And we want to continue with online open enrollment and actually expand that. Right now, we just did this current fiscal year, we did health, vision, dental. We're hoping to get a few more supplementals added so that employees don't need to go to any sort of event other than go online. But there are going to be exceptions, of course, that we have to. The things we also would like to do is establish a formalized internship and workforce outreach program that will allow us to grow our own. That's always been a goal of this administration and the council, I believe, and it'll allow us to really address succession areas throughout the city. And we also want to increase our HR employee cross-training with the staff. We've had 3 staff move in and out of the office, so that's it's actually creating an opportunity. It's been a challenge, but we got the opportunity to do some cross-training, get people out of their silos. And Kim has started the fire entry program. That'll be finished up, but in addition to that, she's got fire promotional activities, police entry activities, and electoral apprentice exams. So she's going to have a pretty full calendar this year. Next slide. And with that, if you have any questions, we are here to answer whatever you might have.
Thank you, Director. Do we have any questions in the chamber?
Alderman Redpath, I'd like to ask a question.
Yes.
Yes, Alderman.
Could you tell me about the drug testing program? Is that randomly done by computer lot, or how does that work?
Correct. We did an RFP. Our current provider is HSHS, and so that we are completely out of the process. On a monthly basis, they have a random generator. It selects who will be tested and what they will be tested for. And
can the departments or the city vary from that? Can they call somebody in and ask them to be tested?
Only if it's for reasonable suspicion testing, which is separate and distinct from random testing.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions in the chamber? No? How about people on Zoom? Alderwoman Turner?
I just have a question about the assistant director position.
Yes.
Is that a brand new position that you are creating, or was it there and it just hadn't been filled? And if so, how long has it been vacant?
We had actually requested that position last year, and it did get cut in the budget process, so it's not budgeted for the current fiscal year, so it would be a new vacant position that we would post for this, for the upcoming fiscal year.
Okay, and we've never had an assistant director before.
It's been several years since we've had an assistant director.
Okay, thank you.
And just for council's information, the high head count for human resources was 12 individuals. It got cut back to 10 in about 2013. And because of budget issues, we cut yet another head. It was the training position in 2019. And for your consideration, to me, it is an expense, but it's also an expense not having it filled. When we don't have someone that can help the departments and help our employees and help our supervisors, that creates an expense that I can't quantify. Because it would be very helpful if we can be more timely, more proactive with issues rather than reactive. And unfortunately, many times we are reactive.
So would this position be a strictly managerial position, or would it be interactive and providing services to employees? And if so, what types of services would it be providing? I guess the reason why I'm asking these questions is because right now we are in such a position where we really don't know what our finances are going to look like, and we're still contemplating the fact that we may have to lay off or furlough employees, and then we're also looking at closing the plants at CWOP. So I'm just concerned about creating an additional managerial position when there's so much uncertainty with all of our current employees.
Understood, and what I would say is the duties that this person will be performing will depend on the applicant themselves. If this person has some level of expertise, that whether it's in training, then they would be facilitating some training. If they are that one-on-one person, then that frees up time for the HR manager that they could do some different activities. Frequently, we get one of the things that HR deals with is employee complaints, supervisor complaints. And as it stands now, with just right now, it's myself and Angie that handle those predominantly. And if we get 3 or 4 calls at once, we have to try and prioritize what's important. Well, it's all important, but staff, they want help right now, and we have to put things on the back burner. And so we're doing a disservice if we make people wait. And depending on the nature of it, it can put us in a position of liability.
So perhaps instead of looking at an assistant director position where you're not sure what you're looking for in that applicant, perhaps that position could be more of a human resources generalist, and then or a trainer or something that is much more specific. And then when you advertise for that position, you know exactly what you're getting. Because what I hear you saying is, I need the position, but I really don't know what this person is going to be doing until I hire that person. So I just wonder if it would be more productive and also more budgetary wise to do the flip of that and determine exactly what it is that's needed most, if it's a trainer or if it's a generalist or what that person is, and then fill that position with that. Because if I'm looking at the salaries with an assistant director, that's going to be almost $100,000 deal. And if I'm looking at a human resources generalist, we're talking half of that. So I'm just trying to figure out what would be the more cost-effective way to go and still meet your needs. And especially if this position is a new position that's never been filled, I think, you can kind of make it what it needs to be to best fit the needs of your department.
Alderwoman, thank you. What I would say is that in my mind, I have a vision of what this person wants to do. Again, it would be that assistant director that would be the go-to person that I can really plan for succession and plan out all those other activities. But the reality is, and I'll give you an example, we've had the labor relations manager posted for probably a month, and The quality of the applicants that we're getting, we're looking for someone with a JD. There's just no way of knowing if we post for an assistant director, will I get someone with the qualifications and experience that can perform the things that we actually want them to do, or will it be someone more in line with that's more front line, and we could adjust accordingly then. So I wish I could tell you that that they're again, in my mind, that person is going to be the first go-to in the line of succession that can help me transition with the other employees. Right now, I can tell you, since 2016, I feel like I have been in the weeds, and it's a precarious position because at some point in the future I will be retiring, and it really, right now, I would say I am probably the subject matter in HR for a number of things, and that's not a good position for the city to be in. And unfortunately, with the staffing in the department, my staff is all focused. They're siloed, and we're trying to get them out of their silos. But we're starting a new ERP program that Joe Bonensinger will probably talk to you about. That is going to probably require a staff person, a lot of staff time, and it can't be mine. So if we have that assistant director, maybe that's someone that can go in that area. Again, it's really going to depend on the experience level of that person and what they bring to the table. If I get a highly qualified person, then I don't anticipate them being the front line for training, that they would be stepping in for where Angie Coslow, the HR manager, is doing now. She could be doing some training. Or I have other staff people that are subject matter areas in their own, and they can do some training, but they're freed up. But right now, if I were to pull Kim off of one task, there's no one else that can do her things. So that's where we're at. We just don't know what we're going to get, and an extra pair of hands would be very beneficial. What those hands will be doing will be contingent on the qualifications of the applicant.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director. I see Alderman Fulgenzi has a question.
Yes, thank you. One of the things I'd like to ask you, and maybe some of the other directors, how are we doing on grant applications as far as people that are experienced in applying for grants?
And right now, I believe Val Yazel, she's got a grants person, and they're trying to coordinate, all of those grants through a single department. If we do come across any grants, we try and point them out to and say, hey, look, is this something we might be eligible for? That we can go after. I mean, the one program, Alderwoman Turner and Alderman Proctor, I mean, they focused in on the AmeriCorps program a few years ago along with Mayor Langfelder, and that's working out well. It's been a challenge with COVID like everything else, but I mean, we look for opportunities where we can. As I mentioned, we've kept the lid on our expenses, and we're going to try and do so, but we're always looking for any opportunities that might arise.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions? I don't see any. Director, I have a question for you. You're talking about reviewing compensation packages, and obviously the mayor's mentioned, it's been mentioned more than once that the city loses employees to the state on a regular basis. So in terms of compensation packages, how does the city measure up for maternity and paternity leave?
As far as what the city offers, we're compliant with family medical leave. And then we also, in both code and in union contracts, there's provision for medical leave. So if someone needed to be gone for an extended period of time, that we allow people to be gone up to 9 months before we would take any actions to remove that individual.
So I should probably clarify, because I'm past this stage, but I know for younger people, and which, building a family and looking to make a commitment to their careers with the state, those younger people are now offered 10 weeks of paid maternity leave and 10 weeks of paid paternity leave. So, and even if both parents work for the state, they can both take that time. So that's a pretty big incentive for a young employee, someone if you're looking to attract new employees. I'm just going to say it. My understanding is the city does not offer paid maternity or paternity leave. Is that correct? We
offer, we're compliant with family medical leave. Whether or not it's paid or unpaid is contingent on whether or not you have benefit time to use. Employees covered.
So we don't have a separate benefit time that's just for new parents?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
And-
I would strongly encourage you to consider that as if you're looking at compensation packages. I mean, I know in my family, you know, I have children who are young adults, and, you know, I'm a grandmother. I'll show pictures next time. But certainly that way, that consideration weighs very heavily on people who have young families. It's not just can they use their federally allowable benefit time, but do they have that specific carved out maternity and paternity leave? And it certainly is a way to build loyal employees who want to stay with us and continue a career with the city, which I think would be very important for us. So I would strongly encourage that consideration be included as we move forward this year.
Okay, and just, I will also point out that, and you know, under IMRF rules, they allow maternity leaves if they're qualifying, and they have their own limitations. You have to be vested with, you have to be with IMRF for 12 months before you're eligible for disability. So they do have maternity leave. It's up to, it's based on the doctor's release, and you get 50% of their compensation. So again, that's nothing we control, but it's something we could look into. We'd have to work with budget and management to see what the expense of that could potentially be.
Thank you. I really think if you're looking at competing with the state in terms of luring employees, I think we need to. That certainly is an area where you know, those benefit packages. It's another tangible approach to entice and keep young people in our employment. And I'm sure, I'm like, as you said, you know, you're having a hard time filling the labor relations position. We heard last night, or sorry, 2 nights ago, about a lack of legal staff for corporation counsel. You know, these are all things that we need to factor in as part of our consideration of what we're offering to people who want to come work for the city, and ways that we can keep them once they get here. You know, if they have to work a certain amount of time before they're eligible for the leave, that's one thing, but we need to be attracting quality people, and that's certainly is a nice way to get to them. Okay, that's my question for the Director Kuzin. Do we have any additional questions from the chamber?
Yeah, just one last comment, touching
Yes,
on the assistant director position. One thing, I think you pointed it out with your comments, and as we know, training went by the wayside when we had tough times, but really you want someone that can provide succession, but will be helping in multiple areas. We all know we need to enhance our internship program, workforce outreach, workforce development, training. I mean, the needs are great with regards to HR and moving that direction, so we appreciate your consideration and support for that position.
And Chair, if I may add one more thing, I discussed
Yes,
this with the mayor, and I not to throw a hot potato into the council, but as you may know, several years ago, the council passed an ordinance limiting salary increases to 5%. And I know it's tough times, and I will say that this happens frequently, where we get notices from employees, and Mayor of the state offered me a 10% increase. Mayor's hands are tied. We can't compete. So that would be something that this body would need to deliberate if they wanted to take a look at that. But my comment to the mayor was, your hands are tied, and future administration's hands are tied. The rationale that got put in, you know, it's debatable, but just for your consideration, I would pose that for you as a possible discussion item at some point in time.
Thank you. That's a reasonable point. I appreciate that.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Alderman Gregory.
I don't know about the whole more than 5% thing, but I will say that, you know, that's probably the pattern of life, that people, you know, move on to better jobs, and that's what they do. We got to stay diligent, and, you know, we got plenty of good people in this city. We got to find them. So that's just my point. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments? Alderwoman DeSenso. Sorry.
Yes, Director Kuzin, thank you for bringing up the 5% cap. But as we've recently learned, you can give 5% one year and 5% another year. So, you know, if you're giving 5% every year to any one individual, that adds up. our average at the state is not 5%. So I'm just saying that it is possible for people to make more, year to year. It doesn't say how often we can give a 5% raise. So
I would agree.
just wanted to make that point.
It's restricted to a year.
Yes, it's 5% within a 12-month period, but, I'll give you an example, and Doug could probably name a dozen. When he loses engineers all the time, they're getting $20,000 a year increases and more. We can't touch that. If we want to lose qualified engineers and have a revolving door where we're getting younger people fresh out of school, they'll stay. And I think, Kenny Winslow will tell you the same thing. People get here, attorneys get here, they get trained, they leave. So, we're not being competitive. So, it's for this body to deliberate what's appropriate.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Alderman Gregory, and then Alderman DeSenza.
Speaking of raises, can you send us a list of who got raises last year? Send it to the council.
Actually, I did send to Alderman Turner, and I think there were 5 non-union increases within the last 12 months, and the rest.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Certainly.
Thank you. Alderwoman DeSenza.
I just want to point out again, if you get a 5% raise every year, over 4 years, that's a 20% raise. So, that's just basic math. And that's a big raise. So,
Understood. And when,
we're public servants. This is, if we got paid what we should get paid for all the work we put into these jobs, we'd be making a nickel an hour.
I would agree. I think you'd make a lot more than that. But all I would say is that, for your non-union employees, I can count in the last 10 years, there's multiple times they didn't get their cost of living adjustments. This is the same thing that most of you, if you started a new job, because I've got this now, I've probably got a handful of people that have started within the last 12 to 18 months, have not got an increase, and I can't tell them when might I get an increase. I don't know, because if you get an increase, a COLA to me is not a typical, good job. Here's some sort of, reward for doing a good job or next step in the process. So for my non-union folks, I have no tools in my toolbox to use. If they're not getting COLAs, which again is no connection to my performance at all, could be the best employee, could be the worst employee. Here's your COLA. So, but we're doing a disservice, and we've got some ideas that maybe we can vet out, but we have some limitations, and we know you guys have the tough calls to say where we're going to come up with this money. I just want to get this conversation so that, something you can think about, because it's something that will need to be addressed, if not now, at some point in the future, because it's like I said with the HR assistant director, with every cost, savings, there's a cost expense.
Madam Chair?
Just one moment, please. Alderwoman Turner had her hand up first.
I'm listening to this discussion about raises, and I'm listening, and all the points are well taken. But I will tell you that I stayed in state government long past the time when I could have moved on and made double what I was making there because of the benefits and the friendly workplace. So maybe instead of focusing so much on raises and those kinds of things, because we all know that the way that these raises are sometimes given out have no rhyme or reason to them. It just depends on who's feeling like giving somebody a raise that day, that perhaps we look at those workplace amenities that will make people more amenable to staying. Simply, things like what Alderwoman Conley brought up about maternity and paternity leave, those kinds of things that are available across the board to anyone who falls into that category, and it's not as subjective as a non-union raise. So, just a thought. Maybe we look at how we can make the workplace more, make people want to stay in the workplace, not so much based on the salary, but the workplace environment.
I'm all for that, and I think everyone here also, just one thing I'm throwing out there again, so if and when you do have these conversations, remember, we're Tier 2 for IMRF employees. It's now a 10-year vest versus when you started, it might have been 8 years. And now regular retirement for Tier 2 is 62 years old. So if you're recruiting a 20-something, it's very different now. When I started in government, you thought, wow, 8 years and 20 years, I could be gone. But now, I mean, it doesn't have the same feel when you're talking to a new hire and saying, wow, I got to work here 10 years. And then, depending on which job I go in, whether it's a union or non-union job, I mean, at some point, all of our successors are going to be dealing with 62-year-old laborers, 62-year-old linemen. It's going to be a challenge. And there's nothing you can do about the IMRF piece, but just, again, I just want to have the discussions. And as Alderman Turner said, I mean, are there other things that we can try and look at to make it more palatable for people to want to stay here? But I just wanted to bring that up, and sorry for taking extra time. I had debated on bringing it up at all, but I just thought I would throw it out there for you.
Director, and I know Alderman, was that Hanauer who had a question?
Yes, please.
I just want to say, Director Kuzin, please don't apologize for bringing up an important issue that we really should be looking at, and I appreciate that. Go ahead, Alderman Hanauer.
Thank you. I've had the opportunity to talk to many non-union employees that are very concerned. Some of them are on the verge of retirement. One of the things that people retire quickly from is once they hit that mark that they know they're not getting raises, what's the point of staying?
I knew that.
The head count's down, where the workload is not getting any smaller. And they're seeing union employees getting raises. And in some cases, the union employees are making more than the supervisors. And we've got to rectify that. You can't get, ideally, as people come up the ladder, you want to bring those people into management. People don't want to go to management because they know they're not going to get raises. I saw it with the state of Illinois for years and years. And it's not fair when the person up top is taking the bullets and taking all the a lot of the pressure, and they're not getting raises. So we went through some pretty tough budget times, and I understand why we had to put a hold on some of the raises. But I think at this stage we're sitting at 20%. We need to look at that. Of fund balance. I don't know how many non-union employees we have off the top of my head now, but I will tell you that some of the ones I've talked to are people that are valuable, extremely valuable in what city government does. And they're talking about leaving. And they're not somebody you're going to be able to replace with someone from below. It's a very big concern. So I appreciate you bringing that up because it is a problem. It's one thing for someone not to get a raise for a year, maybe 2 years. When you start going 4 or 5 years, it's not fair. It's just not fair. And I was a part of it at the state of Illinois. It was extremely frustrating. And what it caused was it's great for the unions because what it does is it migrates people back into the unions. So just I saw it at the state, and we don't want to see that here. So
we have less than 400 non-union employees. Some are exempt from Fair Labor Standards, and some are not. So if you broke it out to what I would call management versus non-management, non-union, it's probably about a good split there. So if you had 200 what I would call management persons, then there's approximately 150 to 200 non-union employees that are not management. So when I look at the cost of that, again, the cost of not even doing a COLA, and I would say that when departments put forward increases, and I think you could ask any director, it's very rare that they're not overly scrutinized. I mean, they're scrutinized at the department level, then they get to HR, they're scrutinized, then they go to OBM, they're scrutinized. Then if everyone signs off, they go to the mayor's office to be scrutinized again, and that usually is the cause for another conversation between the department director and the mayor. I'm not necessarily, saying that, open the floodgates and all that, but I'm just saying it's very precarious when we have very few tools in our toolbox to reward our employees, and we give them every incentive to look around. If I know I'm not going to get anything, if I'm going to be eligible to retire and get a 3% increase every year, see ya. And that's what we're encountering. So we're losing people retiring prematurely, and we're losing employees that just can find a better offer somewhere else.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I can, this is Alderman Donlin.
You're muted.
Sorry, was that Alderman Donilon?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
I can't, thank you. Use that mic, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Cousin, first of all, I want to say, needless to say, 2020, I'm sure in the HR department was a year unlike any other. And what a fine job that you've tried to do and have done, and I appreciate you and all of your staff for what they've done in a very troubling time. So regarding the raise issue that was brought forward, I just want to remind really myself and others that the non-union employees, I'm extremely sympathetic to the fact that they haven't received a raise in quite a few number of years. But that's not something the council controls. We pass a budget. It's up to the chief executive, the mayor, and your staff to decide whether they want to do so. But what I would be curious in learning is if you could put together something that would show numerically what a 1%, 2%, 3%, what kind of dollars we're even talking about, and just get that to us later. That would be helpful to at least look at. But the 5% rule that you mentioned earlier and that you described as being troublesome to some of the departments, I don't remember I remember when it was put in that the rule is the mayor has the authority to give a raise up to 4.9%. If he desires to have it over that amount, then it has to come to council. I don't recall, I've been here 6 years, one time when it's been brought to council. And the reason that was put into place, and it was prior to my tenure as alderman, was that the council thought that they wanted some authority, and that when special circumstances arise like you described, that we have input and understand and will have an open mind. So I would just encourage you, when those events do arise, since the rules are in place, for you to come here, you and or a director, and basically lay it out for us to consider that that opportunity is always open.
And admittedly, I would say that there were 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, races were probably handed out more indiscriminately than they are today. I would also say that when we have posed that options to certain employees, they don't want to appear before this body and justify my salary. So if I'm making, I'm not going to name the individual that recently left, I'm making $120,000. This employee was making $120,000 a year, and the department was seeking for an increase for him. Well, first off, he's got his offer in the hand from the state of Illinois. It says that, it wasn't the state of Illinois for this one, it was the private sector, offering him $145,000.
Right.
He's not going to, that employer and that employee can't wait 4 to 6 weeks. Even if we did some sort of emergency passage, time is always a factor. So, I mean, that's the obstacle. We've let, in those situations where we're not dealt with that, like, for example, if they want to put someone forward because they're doing a bang-up job, most of the times that we've thrown that out there, people say, I don't want to defend myself on why I'm going to get more than 5%.
Yeah, and I don't think those employees should be doing that. I think I would never expect an individual employee to come here and have to defend what they make and what they think they should make. I don't think that's appropriate. But if the special circumstances that you described, granted, if we change the rules, we change the rules, but the rules that are in place now afford the director an opportunity, and or you, and the mayor for that matter, to come to the council and lay it out and for us to consider. It's not like that doesn't exist. So I just wanted to point that out. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Director, I would just like to add, again, this, I think kind of what you've been saying reinforces the point that I made earlier and Alderwoman Turner mentioned. if we make our workplace a more attractive place to be, and that does include other benefits, especially for people with younger employees, with families who are wanting to start families, we do need to look at a big picture perspective here. I mean, I can say certainly if I was someone looking to start a job either with the city or with the state, and I'm absolutely going to look at what my maternity leave would be if I was in that realm. So I think I appreciate your pitch for increased raises for people who've not gotten them for a while. That certainly is a concern, and I've said before, and I will continue to say probably in the next presentation, our employees are the gold in this city, and they're the ones that they are what makes the city work, and we need to be valuing them. We need to be respecting their work and appreciating them. And let's be honest, for a lot of people that also translates into regular wages or regular raises. COLAs should not be an extreme. And I think if we have non-union employees who haven't even gotten COLAs, then we certainly need to be revisiting and again, that's not this council's call. This council's call is to budget the funds for it. But I would strongly encourage, a review of that situation, because we need to keep good people here, and we need to be able to attract them. So thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Do we have any more questions from the council chambers?
Madam Chair, I got one more question, final question.
Yes, please go right ahead.
Do we do exit interviews?
Infrequently. It's not as consistent as we'd like, but a part of that is because we just don't have the manpower to do it.
Because there is people that are leaving the city, and it's not because of money. And
Sure.
I'd encourage that we try to do exit interviews, because we need to know where we have problem areas. And the mayor, I'm sure the mayor would like to know that too, if there is areas like that, because I know everywhere I've worked, we did exit interviews, and I think that's effective to find out if we've got problems other than money. Okay? Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Madam
One
Chairman.
final comment with regards to employees. They are our most valued asset. That's why, even though others were encouraging it, we did not have furloughs or layoffs this year. You look at other communities and they were suffering. That's because we took the proactive steps. We raised taxes. It wasn't pleasurable, believe me, but we did it, and we paid the dividends this year especially, and I think so next year as well. But, it's always looked at as, we have to look at the entire workforce of the city of Springfield, Sangamon County. We talked about Springfield-Sangamon Growth Alliance. One of the challenges is workforce development, and how do you attract workforce wherever you're at. So, so there is benefits that we do provide that the private sector doesn't receive that keeps us competitive there. And we have to look at the salaries associated with that as well. So it's not an easy task. And I can say without a doubt, we would be losing the individuals we lost to the state, because the state just pays way too much. And all you have to look at is the shape they're in financially and the shape we're in financially. So we're good fiduciary stewards of our funds. We value our employees, and we intend to continue that in the future.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to point out you do have quite a few state employees in the room right now, so hope we're not too overpaid.
And retirees, right?
And
Tom?
retirees. I'm looking at you, retirees too. Do we have any more questions for the Director of HR, who I'm sure did not expect he would be up there for this long?
I started it, so it's all right.
It's okay.
Okay, thank you. So, Director, it looks like you're off the hook. Thank you very much for your presentation
Thank you so
tonight.
much. Have a good evening.
I'm sure if people have more questions, they will be emailing them to you before the
Director.
next round. Thank you. And again, we will take a very short 1-minute break. Please don't run off too far, so we